All right, so now I'm going to take this two pieces of things that we've been working on this week. We've been working on View and we've been utilizing Axios, and I'm going to revisit our rocket launch program, and I'm going to utilize View and Axios to get the first 5 launches from the API call. All right, so I came into View and I'm going to go into Get Started, and I'm going to scroll down and get that CDN. And let's see, use the development version. So I'm going to grab this one, copy that, and put it into my code. All right, and then I'm not going to utilize this anymore. So we need to, let's see, we need to create a element for our View instance to go to. So I'm going to create a div. I'm going to give it an ID of app for app View app. So this is where all of my View code is going to reside. I'm going to give it a script tag, create a script tag, and in my script tag I'm going to create a new instance for our app, a new View instance. And remember, in my View instance we're going to put the View instance receives an object as an argument. And so we've seen different things, that properties that are a part of those objects. One of them has to be element, and the element that we used was app. In other words, these two are linking up together. And so what we're telling the View software, the View interpreter, is that we want you to mount our instance of View into this div. So that's kind of the terminology that's used. So within our element, ID equals app, which is where these two are getting tied together. This is where all of our View code is going to go. Okay, another one of our properties was also an object. It was data. And in data, we're going to put in our variables, for lack of a better word. So I'm going to, just to make sure that this is working right, I'm going to create a variable called hello launcher. And I'm going to come into my div here, and I'm going to make sure that that is working. And the way I do that is I'm going to make I don't know, it could be anything. Maybe it's a p tag. And in my p tag, I'm going to bind my message. And so if I've done that right and I reload my page, I should have, let me close that out, hello launcher, which I do. So I have bound this property, this data property, to this line of this p tag right here. So anytime message changes, it will change here in the p tag. Well, I'm not doing any changes right now, but this is me just making sure that I've mounted my instance of my View app correctly. I have a div that is receiving that information, and everything inside of this div is open territory for View. And I also have a CDN that's allowing me to utilize View. If I didn't have this CDN, is that the right one? Yep. Let me just comment it out for the moment. Then you're going to see the double mustaches because I'm not linked to View. So, all right. So let me try that again, and hello launcher. All right. So the next step is going to be to do our Axios call. All right. So I'm going to give you another property, and this is called mounted. It's actually a method, I suppose, because it's in parentheses. So the idea here is that when this element, when our instance of our View app gets mounted inside of our div, when those two get tied together, at that point in time when the browser does that, then run this piece of code. So it's kind of synonymous with a window on load kind of thing. So we're going to use mounted here to do our Axios call. So at the time that this app is the instance of our View app is created and put into our div, in other words, just before this message was written, then I want you to make that Axios call. So I'm just going to copy some code in because I don't want to retype it all. Let's see, I have to do this. Okay, so then let me close that out. And inside then we have let me do this. Function. We had an anonymous function, and we received a response from our Axios call. Okay, so hopefully this looks familiar from the last video. In fact, it's still up here, right? So we had our then, we created an anonymous function. By the way, this word response, that's just a variable name. It could be whatever you want, but the agreement is that if Axios returns something successfully, it's going to put that payload into whatever variable name you have here. So response seems fitting there. All right, so a new syntax that you are going to see in this, and the reason why I have to show you this syntax is A, it's good for you, and B, oftentimes Mountain doesn't work unless you use this new syntax because it's the newer JavaScript. So I'll start up here. We have this function, it's an anonymous function, and we're sending our anonymous function an argument. All right, so the new syntax looks like this. It's the same thing. It's an anonymous function that we're sending some data to, but a shortcut or the newer version of this in the newer versions of JavaScript is we're going to erase the word function. We're going to keep the response in a parenthesis, and we're going to use what's called a fat arrow. Oops, equals and fat. Equals and greater than. There we go. And so this is doing the same thing. This is saying I'm an anonymous function. I just got rid of the word function. If I'm not sending any data, then you'll see that the parentheses will be blank, but I am sending data. I'm sending that response. Oops. There we go. And then this is just the shortcut for this is an anonymous function, and then everything else continues the same. So this is the same thing as our anonymous function call here. The only reason why I'm introducing it to you, well, like I said, one is it's good for you, and sometimes this mounted doesn't work, Axios doesn't work unless you use this new notation. So I'm going to change function to my new syntax, which is with the fat arrow. So now I've got the same thing I had going on here, except we're doing it in a little different syntax. Okay, so from there, it's pretty much the same thing. We're going to get our response, our payload. We're going to, well, let's see. Let me do it this way. All right, so let's console log. Let's console log array launches. Console.log array launches. Let's just do this at a step at a time because I always am a proponent of let's watch it work so that I know piece by piece what's happening. All right, so it appears that my code is still working. That's good. It appears that array of launches is returning an array of all of my launches, which is what I expected. This is still making a call here, and I'm not wanting to use that because I've moved into this index. I should have done that at the beginning. So that's why I had so much data going on here. So I'm not using this JavaScript file anymore because I've moved everything into my instance of my View app. So now I'm getting an array of objects, which makes sense. But I want to put it into my View instance. So here's what we're going to do to accomplish that. I'm going to make it can be whatever, but I'm going to make a p tag. And I'm going to use a v directive. I'm going to do v4 equals and put that into parentheses. And the idea is that every time I'm going to have my View instance loop through all of the elements in my array, and I'll call it launch for launch in array launches. Okay. So, and I understand that I'm getting some errors here, and I'm going to deal with that in a minute. Did I spell launch right? No, L-A-U. Okay. So I'm asking View to loop through everything that is in array launches and do something with it. And what I want to do, well, let's see. What I want to do ultimately is this, right? I want to be able to print out the name. So every time we should be looping through array launches, which should have 5 elements in it. The only problem that we're receiving now is that this is a matter of scope. So within this function, array launches exists only as long as we're in this then function. But what we really want to do is assign whatever array launches is into our data object. So, and the reason for doing that is so that I can therefore see that data here in my view directive. So what I'm trying to get at is this. I'm going to erase the word var here. I'm going to make a data property called array launches. And at the beginning, it's not going to have anything in it, so I'm just going to make it an empty string. But after this Axios call is run, I want this array launches to get our response. And so remember from a video we had before, if I want to update my apps, this instance's properties, I need the word this. So now I'm saying this array launches needs to have this response data in it. And the reason for that is that I can access that in a for loop. All right, so now I'm getting the error that array launches is not defined on line 29. And in fact, it's not defined because array launches, console log is looking for an array launches here within this function. There isn't one that exists here, which is why we need to go back to this keyword. Look in my data properties. I'm an instance of an app. Look in my instance properties, this.array. And now we are definitely getting some arrays. So that looks, we're getting better there. So now we need to do something with our p tags in order to see those objects in our DOM. And so the idea here then is now that array launches is being filled from our app's data properties, now we have access to array launches, which now actually should have some data in it because it got returned from our API. And each time I want you, View, to loop through that array, and each iteration of that loop put one of those arrays into launch so that I can display it. And so we'll use those curly braces to indicate some data binding. And the data binding means that anytime this gets refreshed, anytime that the array launches changes, the data in this mustache will automatically change as well. That's what data binding means. So anytime array launches changes, the data in the mustaches will change, which means that if for some reason our call takes longer than expected, our users, oh, this looks pretty, our users can still interact with our web page until the launches get returned to the page. That's the whole idea of asynchronous calls. So apparently I don't have anything in it. That's not making it happy. So let's do launch. And we need to get to launch, and I think name might be fitting. Let's see what happens. There we go. So now we're getting name dot, and maybe we're going to do launch, launch, and window start, I think was the other one. And we are missing something. We're missing some curly braces, so therefore it's not working. We've got too many curly braces and not enough curly braces. Let me put that back up here. I guess I'm stuck on word wrap, and then these need to closing. All right, so just for clarity, I'll move this down here so you can see it. So I have two curly braces opening and closing, launch, window start, and now that's displaying that. So utilizing the View app and Axios, I'm getting the 5 function call, or the 5 launches returned from my Rocket Launch API, utilizing a promise using Axios, which is returning us a promise in the form of a anonymous function that we are then filling our instance array with the data so that we can use View to create a for loop that loops through all of those launches and enables us to dig down into the individual properties that we need. As a mouthful. So that is View access to Axios via View. Okay,